Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're literally popping the hood on your cardiovascular system. We're going to dive deep into exactly how aerobic exercise acts as this incredibly profound molecular anti-aging tool for your heart and your blood vessels. Seriously, if you're over 40, or really if you're just planning on living a long, vibrant life, you are absolutely going to want to pay close attention to the mechanics we're about to uncover here.
Here is a quick look at our roadmap for today. We're covering 1. The aging cardiovascular system. 2. Reshaping your heart's structure. 3. Rewiring the nervous system. 4. Rebuilding vessels and mitochondria. 5. Maximizing your VO₂ max. And finally, 6. Habits for lifelong health. Let's get right into it.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the aging cardiovascular system. So, what exactly is going on under the surface when we hit our 4th and 5th decades? You might start noticing a bit more fatigue, or maybe your doctor points out a creeping rise in your blood pressure, but what's actually driving that shift? Well, according to Medline Plus, the main artery coming straight from your heart, the aorta, actually becomes thicker, stiffer, and a lot less flexible. It's kind of like an old garden hose losing its bend, and this forces your heart to work overtime just to pump blood, setting a pretty dangerous foundation for future cardiovascular issues.
If we just sit back and let aging take the wheel without any intervention, the sedentary heart undergoes this stiffening and shrinking process. It basically turns into a rigid box. The walls thicken, and it actually takes longer to fill up with blood. But contrast that with an aerobically trained heart. That heart remains a highly elastic, high-volume engine. It handles what we call volume overload beautifully, staying highly compliant. This isn't just about feeling a little more energetic on your morning walk. This is fundamentally preventing your heart from turning into a stiff, overworked, and exhausted muscle.
Moving right along to Section 2, reshaping your heart's structure.
Now, when you hear the word hypertrophy, you probably picture a bodybuilder, right? You think muscle growth. But dynamic aerobic exercises like cycling, running, or swimming create a totally different kind of stress on the body. It's called volume overload. And this prompts the heart to undergo something super interesting called eccentric hypertrophy. This is actually a really healthy structural adaptation where the heart adds new muscle units end to end. So instead of just building thick, stiff walls that face inward, it expands the entire left ventricular chamber size, sort of like blowing up a flexible balloon.
Get this. Aerobic training actually bumps up your left ventricular mass by 15 to 25%. And because that chamber is now larger and way more flexible, it fills with more blood and ejects a massive stroke volume with every single beat. In physiology, this is known as the Frank-Starling mechanism. Think of it like pulling back a rubber band. A bigger, more flexible stretch gives you a way more powerful snap. This directly combats that natural age-related stiffening we just talked about. Simply put, by pumping way more blood per beat, your heart just doesn't have to beat nearly as often.
Okay, Section 3, rewiring the nervous system.
40 to 60 beats per minute. That number right there represents the target resting bradycardia, or low resting heart rate, of a highly trained individual. Compare that to the 70 to 80 beats per minute of your average sedentary adult. I mean, think about the math on that. Over the course of a day, a week, or a whole year, a heart beating 50 times a minute versus 80 times a minute, you are literally saving millions of unnecessary contractions. Millions. But how exactly does the body flip this switch?
Well, this beautifully low heart rate is driven by two main mechanisms. First, aerobic exercise enhances parasympathetic dominance. In plain English, your brain uses the vagus nerve to tell your heart, hey, chill out, we're good. Second, you actually physically reduce the density of HCN4 pacemaker channels. These are essentially the microscopic ignition keys that tell your heart to beat fast. Down-regulating them greatly extends the resting phase of your heartbeat, which means your heart muscle gets maximum oxygen and you get long-term protection against age-related cardiac events. It's just a win-win.
Let's zoom out a bit for Section 4, rebuilding vessels and mitochondria.
Have you ever heard of the Fick principle? It's this incredibly elegant equation that proves your aerobic capacity isn't just about your heart. It's about the entire supply chain. Oxygen travels from the central pump, your heart, through the arteries. But those arteries rely on healthy endothelial function to actually dilate and open up. That allows blood to flow down into the microscopic capillary roads, and finally into the mitochondria, which are the little engines inside your cells that actually consume the oxygen. If there is a traffic jam or a breakdown anywhere in this chain, you're going to feel tired, sluggish, and totally gassed.
And here's where aging really tries to get us, right down in the microvessels. Sedentary aging causes something called capillary rarefaction.
It sounds technical, but it literally just means your tiny blood vessels are dying off and disappearing. It's like a city permanently closing lanes on a major highway. But aerobic remodeling reverses this. The sustained blood flow from exercising creates physical shear stress rubbing against your vessel walls. This stress signals your body to release nitric oxide and physically rebuild those capillary roads, increasing overall density by over 13%. It also triggers the growth of brand new mitochondria. You are literally paving a denser, more efficient vascular highway system to fight off aging.
Which brings us nicely to Section 5, maximizing your VO₂ Max.
So, building a sky-high VO₂ max really requires a balanced attack. On one side, we have Zone 2, or low-intensity steady-state training. Hovering around 60 to 70% of your max heart rate, this is your foundation. This is exactly what drives that massive capillary growth and mitochondrial density we just talked about. On the other side, though, we have Zone 4, high-intensity interval training. Pushing past 85% of your max heart rate forces your heart to maximize its stroke volume and creates rapid, time-efficient metabolic changes. Combining these two, it's the ultimate 1-2 punch for your oxygen transport system.
Now, here is the absolute crucial takeaway. 20 milliliters per kilogram per minute. Burn that number into your brain. Why does this specific threshold matter so much? Because research clearly shows that if your VO₂ max drops below this level, you face a severe, immediate risk of losing your ability to live independently as you age. Seriously, everyday tasks like carrying a few bags of groceries, climbing a flight of stairs, or even just getting up off the floor, they become exhausting or entirely impossible. VO₂ max is absolutely not just a vanity metric for elite athletes, it is the literal ceiling of your lifelong physical independence.
Finally, wrapping things up with Section 6, habits for lifelong health.
Of course, supporting this amazing internal engine requires some holistic maintenance. You can't just run a few miles a week and then completely ignore the rest of the machine, right? As highlighted by Medline Plus, you've got to lay the groundwork with a heart-healthy diet, keeping saturated fats low to prevent plaque buildup. But you also need to be proactive. Get that blood pressure checked every single year. Get your cholesterol looked at every 5 years. And guys, if you are between 65 and 75 and have any history of smoking, getting an ultrasound to screen for an abdominal aortic aneurysm is a critical preventative step. Don't skip it.
I want to leave you with this incredibly powerful quote, which really summarizes decades of hard research. We've seen how aerobic exercise remodels the physical structure of your heart, calms down your nervous system, and builds dense new networks of capillaries. This whole process isn't just about staving off some distant disease, it's about fundamentally optimizing the human machine. So I gotta ask you, are you just sweating it out to look good in the mirror, or are you actually ready to build that invisible engine? The one that is gonna power your vitality, your resilience, and your total independence for decades to come. Something to think about. Catch you next time.